There's another front we need to discuss, and that's the antimicrobial front. It's Antimicrobial Awareness Week, and we want to get you in the know. The World Health Organization has declared antimicrobial resistance to be one of the 10 global public health threats humanity is facing. So what is antimicrobial resistance, and why is it so dangerous for us, and why do I have so much trouble saying that word? With us this morning, Dr. Dao Nguyen, director of the new Antimicrobial Resistance Center at McGill. Dr. Nguyen, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, what is this Antimicrobial Awareness Week about? This is about a resistance to antibiotics, right?
Primarily about antibiotics, although not restricted to antibiotics. Mm-hmm. But as you say, the UN, the World Health Organization, is recognizing that this is one of the top public health threats. And predictions are that if it's left unchecked by 2050, this could be the leading cause of death globally. So numbers are a little bit frightening. And the Antimicrobial Awareness Week is a worldwide effort to raise awareness about this impending crisis amongst the general population, the scientific, the medical community, policymakers, etc.
So this is very interesting and very alarming, but you understand we're all going through the COVID pandemic, and now you're saying, there's even something bigger coming up. So, I mean, I think it's important. We need to be able to walk and chew gum here and talk about serious matters. So what would it mean if we didn't take care of this and we don't respond properly to this threat?
So we use antibiotics for so many things in medicine as a starting point. Perhaps for simple things like if you had a urinary tract infection, you get antibiotics, it's cleared, but also for a number of life-threatening infections like pneumonia or bloodstream infection. And the less well-known fact is we rely on antibiotics to make interventions like surgeries and chemotherapy safe. So if you thought about antibiotics no longer being effective, this could mean what has been called a post-antibiotic world. So small infections becoming much more serious, life-threatening or threatening a limb or whatnot, and procedures that become less safe because we can no longer prevent effectively infections happening in vulnerable patients.
So this is fascinating. We never realize the scope, how much we rely on antibiotics. So what should we be thinking about, or what should people know about taking antibiotics?
I think that we should recognize that on one hand, it is an essential and incredibly useful medication. And when used appropriately, I think that it has made tremendous progress in how healthier we are and how modern medicine works. But on the other hand, there are many circumstances in which antibiotics can be overused or misused. For patients, taking antibiotics for conditions that don't require, if you have a viral bronchitis, a little sore throat, something that is not caused by a bacteria, just let your body take care of it and don't reach out for antibiotics. There are other places in the world where you don't even need to go and see a doctor, and people are popping this like sugar pills that you don't feel well and you take a little bit of antibiotics. And that's really also a major challenge.
Speaking with Dr. Dao Nguyen, the director of the new Antimicrobial Resistance Center at McGill. So you've launched this center. I'm curious, what drew you to this area of specialization? Why are you so passionate about this very important issue?
Well, I am a researcher, but also a clinician, and I see a lot of patients with respiratory infections, and I study some of the most drug-resistant bacteria.
Wow.
But I'm also a big believer in interdisciplinary and collaborative research. And so the goal of the center, which is a first of its kind in Montreal, is to bring together people from different disciplines, different departments, bring doctors and basic scientists together, bring people who look at human health, but also animal health, the environment, because there's not a single solution that's going to solve the problem of antimicrobial resistance. It is so complex. And we really need to put all of our heads together to collaborate and to think about it in outside of the usual silos that many of us perhaps have been used to in the past.
So how did COVID-19 impact the research into antimicrobial resistance?
Well, I think that like many other places, COVID has completely disrupted everything, particularly last year. And in our community, many of the scientists and clinicians involved in antimicrobial resistance are also experts in infection and immunity that is relevant to COVID. So, the efforts and the time, energy has been dedicated a lot to COVID, has obviously taken away from what we're doing in antimicrobial resistance. Hopefully we're back on track. There is a silver lining, which is that, with COVID-19, as you said, we've been immersed in it for almost 2 years now, and everyone is aware of how important infectious diseases are, the transmission and infection control. So that has been a silver lining because we are also thinking about transmission and threats of infectious diseases in antimicrobial resistance.
I want to get back to something about our attitudes and the way we use antibiotics, Dr. Nguyen. I'm wondering, on the one side, do you see this is about money too, isn't it? There's a lot of companies, a lot of doctors, a lot of advertising pushing medicine on us. And so, we've seen it with the opioid crisis, and I'm not comparing both, but I'm just thinking about the overall environment. Do we need to do more as a society? And I'm looking obviously at governments to do more, and maybe also the profession, the medical profession, at better educating us about how, when, and if we should be taking antibiotics at all.
Yeah. I think you raise a very interesting but also complex question.
Oh, definitely.
Which
we'll solve in the next 30 seconds.
Exactly. So first of all, I'll just mention that antibiotics are not just used for humans, but in much greater quantity for animal health and growth promotion and in the crops. And so that there's an entirely different economic conversation and often tough decisions that has to be made about what is the proper antibiotic use in those arenas. So that is indeed, many financial economic things at stake. For human use in medicine, in fact, the irony is that antibiotics are not money-making drugs. It's actually the opposite of things like chemotherapy and a heart cholesterol medication. They are dirt cheap. These are old medicines, and one of the struggles that we have is that big pharmaceutical companies have completely disinvested themselves in the discovery of antimicrobials, particularly antibiotics, because there is no money to be made from them.
Very interesting.
So that is actually the business challenge that we're facing, rather than too much profit being made.
So there's a money issue, and that's a perfect segue to my last question, Dr. Nguyen, is philanthropy is a big part of developing this antimicrobial center, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, first of all, it's a new initiative, and the time right now is now. There is a lot of effort to mobilize the community at the local, at the national, at the international level. And so the center needs to get off the ground, and we have big ambitions, and we need the resources to do so. And there are a number of things that are not so far well supported by kind of traditional funding mechanisms, actually including antimicrobial discovery, because this is not of great interest to the big pharma companies out there. So philanthropy will really catalyze, I think, some of the innovations and help, the start off projects and get this center off the ground.
Well, this is very interesting and cause for serious concern, and we'll definitely want to follow this very closely. Thank you so much, Dr. Nguyen, for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Dr. Dao Nguyen is the director of the new Antimicrobial Resistance Center at McGill. And thank you for the text on helping me how to pronounce this word. I don't know why.
You had the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
I know. I had the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. But, that's why we learn. Always something.